Long before skyscrapers pierced the sky and traffic filled the streets, Jakarta was simply a settlement along the banks of a river. That river, the Ciliwung, flowed quietly to the sea, carrying stories of those who lived beside it. The land was fertile, the air filled with the cries of birds, and the horizon opened wide to the Java Sea. It was here that small communities of Austronesian peoples began to build their lives. They were farmers, fishers, and traders who recognized the blessing of the river's constant flow and the ocean's endless path. These early settlers understood the importance of water. The Ciliwung was not just a stream, it was their lifeline. From it they drew food, irrigation, and transportation. Boats carved from wood floated on its currents, connecting villages. Every dawn, fishers would paddle out toward the sea, while traders loaded spices, rice, and cloth to exchange with neighboring islands. This river gave birth to a bustling community whose rhythm was guided by the tides. But the land was not without its challenges. The river often swelled during heavy rains, flooding the low-lying plains. Yet the people adapted, building houses on stilts and learning the cycles of nature. To them, life was a balance between the gifts and trials of the earth. What mattered most was the unity they shared, the traditions they carried, and the dreams they held of a prosperous future. Though they did not yet call it Jakarta, this place was already alive with the pulse of humanity. Its destiny as a crossroads of cultures was quietly being written, line by line, in the hearts of its earliest inhabitants. As centuries passed, the small riverside villages grew into something larger, something that began to attract the eyes of many. By the 13th and 14th centuries, the settlement had become a vital port known as Sunda Kelapa. It was part of the powerful Sunda Kingdom, whose lands stretched across West Java. From this harbor, wooden ships with tall sails departed to carry rice, pepper, sandalwood, and other treasures across the archipelago. The salty wind of the Java Sea mixed with the scent of spices, and the harbor echoed with the voices of sailors speaking many tongues. Sunda Kelapa was more than just a marketplace. It was a doorway to the wider world. Traders from as far as China, India, and the Middle East arrived on their journeys, bringing silk, ceramics, textiles, and new ideas. The port became a meeting point of cultures, where stories, languages, and traditions intertwined. Over time, the people of Sunda Kelapa grew accustomed to diversity, learning how to bargain, how to welcome strangers, and how to guard their own traditions amidst the flow of change. Yet, the wealth of the port also drew attention from powerful outsiders. The spices and fertile lands of Java were no secret. Foreign powers, hearing of Sunda Kelapa's prosperity, began to dream of controlling it. The local rulers were aware of this and strengthened their alliances, but the future was already shifting. The port was destined to become more than just a regional hub. It was becoming the jewel of Java, a prize that many would fight to claim. Here in Sunda Kelapa, the seeds of Jakarta's future were sown. The humble fishing village by the river had transformed into a thriving harbor, setting the stage for conflict, conquest, and rebirth. The prosperity of Sunda Kelapa did not go unnoticed for long. By the early 16th century, waves of change rolled across the seas. From the west came the Portuguese, drawn by the lure of spices and wealth. They sought to build a foothold in Sunda Kelapa, striking deals with local rulers. But their arrival alarmed neighboring powers, especially the rising Islamic sultanates along Java's northern coast. Among them was the Sultanate of Demak, eager to expand its influence and protect the flow of trade from European control. In 1527, a decisive moment arrived. Led by Fatahillah, a commander sent by the Sultan of Demak, forces marched towards Sunda Kelapa. The battle was fierce, with fire and steel clashing along the harbor's edge. The Portuguese, though armed with cannons, were eventually driven out. The victory was more than just a triumph of war. It was the birth of a new identity for the city. To mark this victory, Sunda Kelapa was renamed Jayakarta, meaning glorious victory. Jayakarta stood as a symbol of resistance and pride. Its people believed their land had been preserved from foreign domination, and the name itself became a banner of hope. The markets reopened, ships returned, and life pulsed again through the port. Yet beneath this triumph lay the shadow of greater powers still watching from afar. Other European fleets, Dutch and British, were already sailing into Asian waters, hungering for control over the spice trade. For a time, Jayakarta flourished under its new name. It was a city of promise, where traders and settlers believed in prosperity under their own banner. But history had yet more storms to unleash. The city's identity, once reshaped by victory, would soon be tested by betrayal, occupation, and the struggle to survive. The glory of Jayakarta, though celebrated, was destined to face yet another trial. By the early 17th century, ships bearing the red, white, and blue flags of the Dutch East India Company, VOC, appeared on the horizon. The Dutch were not simple traders. They were empire builders, determined to control the spice routes and dominate the archipelago's wealth. In 1619, under the command of Jan Pieterszoon Cohen, the VOC launched a devastating assault on Jayakarta. The city, once vibrant with trade and culture, was reduced to ashes. Smoke filled the sky, wooden houses burned, and the proud name Jayakarta was nearly erased in fire. On its ruins, the Dutch built a new city. They called it Batavia, after the Batavia tribe of their homeland, symbolizing that this was no longer just a port of the Javanese. It was now the center of Dutch power in Asia. Batavia was designed in the image of a European city. Canals were dug, fortifications erected, and whitewashed buildings rose where bamboo huts had once stood. To the Dutch, Batavia was a jewel of colonial ambition, their stronghold for more than 3 centuries. But for the local people, it was a city of forced labor, disease, and foreign rule. The marshy lands around the canals bred malaria, and thousands of workers perished to maintain the city that did not belong to them. Still, Batavia grew. Ships from Europe, China, and across the archipelago filled its harbor. Spices, sugar, and coffee flowed through its warehouses, enriching the VOC and later the Dutch crown. Yet beneath the surface, resentment brewed. The memory of Jayakarta, the glorious victory, did not vanish. It lingered quietly, a reminder that the city's true spirit belonged not to the colonizers, but to the people whose ancestors had built it by the river. Centuries rolled by under the name Batavia, but no empire lasts forever. In the 20th century, the winds of change began to sweep across the world. Colonized nations whispered of independence, and Indonesia was no exception. The people of Batavia, long weary of foreign rule, carried within them the memory of Jayakarta, the spirit of victory, resilience, and freedom. During the Japanese occupation of World War II, the name Batavia began to fade. The Japanese called the city Jakarta, a shortened form of Jayakarta, to erase the Dutch identity. When the war ended and Indonesia declared its independence in 1945, the name Jakarta was embraced with pride. It was not just a name, it was a rebirth. The city, once torn apart by conquest and colonialism, was now the capital of a free nation. Jakarta became the beating heart of Indonesia, a place where the nation's history, struggles, and hopes converged. From its humble beginnings as riverside villages, to the proud port of Sunda Kelapa, to the triumph of Jayakarta, and through the long shadow of Batavia, Jakarta had endured it all. Each name was a chapter, and together they formed a story of survival and transformation. Today, Jakarta is a city of millions, alive with energy and contradictions. Skyscrapers rise beside traditional markets, and modern highways cut across old kampongs. The Siliwang River still flows, carrying echoes of the first settlers who built their lives along its banks. Jakarta's story is far from over. It continues to evolve, shaped by the people who call it home. And so, the tale comes full circle. From a quiet riverside settlement to a bustling capital, Jakarta's journey reminds us that cities, like people, are shaped by struggle, memory, and the unyielding will to endure.